there, today I'd like to tackle a common problem that we have with fabric paints. That is, if you haven't used your paints for a little while, you'll find that they become rather thick and they look incredibly gloopy. So if you were to try and paint with this, you're going to find that it's not spreading very easily and you've got a bit of lumps and stuff. One's natural tendency is to try and just add a bit of water, but by adding a bit of water, first of all, you make it very, very wet. And secondly, the paint isn't that even on your surface. But there is one magic thing that you can actually do, and that will just transform your fabric paints back to their original state. And it's a really, really easy thing to do. So we're going to need to take your paint, and this is normal table salt, quite a fine one, and you need to just sprinkle a few grains. I'm going to say that again. You need to sprinkle a few grains of salt into your fabric paint. And you need to start to mix that. I don't know why. It's a chemical thing. If you're a scientific mind, you probably could tell me why it does thin the paint down, but it does. Water is just going to make it into a very sort of soft wash, and you're going to get that kind of washed effect, which is maybe not what you're trying to achieve. So you're just going to add a little bit of salt at a time, mixing it in, seeing what's happening with the actual fabric paint, and then gradually adding a little bit more. You don't want to go and chuck a whole teaspoon in at once, because you'll find that maybe that is too much. Now let me just say that there are certain things in paint that you need to understand, and so some pigments absorb much more moisture than others. Yellow, for instance, is quite a weak pigment in terms of color strength, and it doesn't absorb much moisture at all. But something like a yellow ochre or a black or even a white tends to soak up all the moisture fairly quickly. So you're going to find that if you're working with those colors and you put them aside for a couple of months, that they perhaps do get thick. So you can see that by adding this, that originally the fabric paint is starting to soften up a bit, is probably the word that I'm looking for. Soften up and actually starting to mix more easily. It's starting to become more creamy. Okay, so you're just going to add slowly in until you've actually got the desired consistency. I would never add water directly into my tub of paint, because that actually changes the nature of my paint for all the projects in the future. I'm going to have to use it in that particular way. But by adding salt into this, you're not actually doing any harm. And this tip I was given by one of the guys that actually made fabric paints in my hometown. So he was a manufacturer, and that's what he told me. So you can see by adding the salt in, that already that the paint is actually getting a lot looser. So you just continue with the salt until you're happy with the consistency of your paint. But we've gone from that really, really lumpy consistency into a nice smooth consistency. I would tend to say rather leave this maybe overnight, just so that the salt has a chance to soften the paint completely. But you'll find that your results are much better. So when I want to paint with this now, I'm actually getting a much more even coating with my paint. Okay, simple little tip. And you can see immediately the difference in color. Just having the salt in the paint gives me an intense color. Adding the water, it thins down the color completely. So your color actually does change. All right, so just work with the salt, play with it a little bit at a time. You can add more, but if you put too much in, you're going to find it very difficult to remove it. Okay, so there you go. How to soften your paints once they become thick and goopy. And this is for your fabric paints. Please subscribe to my channel. There are lots of videos with fabric painting coming up, and lots of techniques which I know have not been seen by many people in the world, because we do things a little bit differently here. And I'd love your feedback, so please just leave a comment in the box below. Bye for now.